Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Juane Castella Onyuku, and I warmly welcome you to the 111th Power Dialogue, proudly hosted by the Electricity Hub. Today's conversation is a very critical conversation surrounded. It's a very critical conversation in Nigeria's energy sector. To unpack, and the topic is building a sustainable power market, balancing debt recovery, liquidity, and investment. To unpack these vital but very critical topics, we have an exceptional panel who bring deep experiences which cuts across generation, financing, and distributive perspective. Join me to welcome Osa Imohude, the Director, Infrastructure and Investment, and he will be moderating this section. The second person that will be on this panel is Dr. Joy Ogaji. She's the Chief Executive Officer, Executive Secretary, Association of Power Generation Companies. And the third person is Itohan Ihede. She's the General Manager, Guarantees and Risk Management Department, Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC. And the last person on the panel is Abdulaziz Fagi. He's the lead energy specialist at the World Bank. The session is about to start, so kindly switch off your phones or put your phones on silent and enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
Hello? 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 Okay. Better. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Once again, welcome to the 111th Power Dialogue session, titled Building a Sustainable Power Market, Balancing Debt Recovery, Liquidity, and Investment. As you can see, we have a wealth of knowledge from the panelists here today. And as introduced, I will be moderating the session. So this session dives right into one of the toughest and most urgent challenges in the Nigeria power sector. The massive debt weighing down the entire value chain, from GenCos, gas suppliers to embed service providers. The financial overhang continues to choke liquidity and discourage new investments. But today isn't just about listing all the problems. It's about finding real, actionable solutions. How do we work to build credible debt resolution framework that restores balance, confidence, and flow in the market? What's the right mix of tools, securitization, financing, government-backed guarantees, etc.? Beyond debt resolution, we'll also look at the bigger picture of liquidity, how cost-reflective tariffs, smarter subsidies, metering can strengthen cash flow and attract sustainable financing. The goal is simple: to unpack what's working, what isn't, and take bold steps, or at least outline bold steps that need to make Nigeria's electricity market financially resilient and investment ready. So let's get right into it. First objective here, as we go through the questions, is to assess the trillion naira debt and propose strategies for recovery and prevention. So I will begin with Dr. Joy. From the perspective of the generation companies, how has the trillion naira debt affected operations, maintenance, and investment in capacity expansion?
Hello? Okay, mine is working. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to uh, Electricity Hub for inviting me. Sorry, I can't remember when last I was here because I got tired of the talking and no action. So I'm here again. I don't know when next I'll be here again, but I'm here. Um, I think the only person that may not know the impact, the trillion, because when I first came back from the UK, hearing a million self was too heavy for me because over there, if you have £1,000 in your hand, you're a rich man. But when I came back here in 2011, millions is like even the Abuki guy, shiny shoes, just mentions he wants to be a millionaire. So now we have moved from million to billion to our invoices are now in trillions. I don't know after the trillion where it will be, whether we are going to zillion, I don't even know. But that is just a by the way. The impact are enormous. 2 days ago, the association marked 10-year anniversary in existence. We had 2 days workshop. My sister Itoa was there. And most of the Gencos could not even pay flight ticket to come. It was that bad. The annual dues, which sustains the association, just only 5 Gencos have paid as at October, out of the number of Gencos that you know. And this has never been the case. Some of the generation companies cannot even pay salaries. Some of their units, mandatory maintenance that needs to be carried out, they couldn't because one, the OEMs that need to come and carry out the maintenance need cash. And the cash is not in Naira, it has to be in dollars. So one, they do not even have the Naira, talk more of even converting it to a dollar to get the OEMs to come. So things are really, really bad. This, if there is, when I was in secondary school, there is this, when we were doing a superlative nouns, one of my classmates, when they said, say, bad, use superlative to do bad. He said, bad, bada, abadaba. This is actually abadaba. We have reached the stage of abadaba now. Worse is an understatement. It is really, really bad. The Genco investors are really in a bad state. They are really not happy. Promises were made in July after the meeting with the president, who graciously approved the 4 trillion Naira bond to be put in place. And today, as you know, is the 29th of October. Bureaucracy and political underpinnings had hindered this bond from coming to fruition. So this bond, this 4 trillion, as you know, covered between 2015 to 2024. So if this component has not even been dealt with, you know that 2025 is already building up. If you check NEC report, you can see every month what is accumulating. So it's a bad situation. It's a bad situation.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. So in this very, very bad situation, please, can you essentially explain to us that given the recurring liquidity shortfalls, do you believe that Embed's current business model is sustainable? Or does the market need a total restructuring of the off-taker system?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Itohan. I work for Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. And as you know, the reason why the bulk trader was set up was to guarantee generation companies, guarantee new investments into the sector. And to do that, the company needed to be capitalized. Of course, at inception, we were capitalized to the tune of $850 million, and everyone knows that that's how the Azura project came to fruition. If you have $850 million as your capitalization, it's not to be spent. It's supposed to be a revolving capitalization. But over the years, the funds have been wiped out. First, based on the non-cost reflective tariff and non-adherence to contract. So it's not about the model, it's about effectiveness of contracts, commercial contracts being aligned with the realities on ground. You can't have a contract that looks good on paper, but it's not realistic. So until we are able to have contracts that are working, effective contracts, whatever model it is to have a good model and make the contracts work. How do we make this contract work? Regulation. That's another thing we have very good in the country. A lot of good regulation. In fact, we are even over-regulated. But implementing those regulations is the challenge. So I'll just quickly speak to the 4 trillion. I noticed that the moderator doesn't want to use it. It just says trillion naira debt. Trillion naira debt, meaning it's in trillions, but we don't want to put a figure. And yeah, it's true. We do owe generation companies circa 4 trillion naira. And this 4 trillion arose from reconciliation between the GENCOs, GASCOs, and MBET. And a delegation did go to the president, and president has approved that the GENCOs be paid. So what has happened is that the economy we cannot do 4 trillion in one go. We've put a lot of things in place, and we're about to do the first tranche. So we're going to do it in tranches. First tranche is 1.2 trillion naira, 1.23 trillion. We have the transaction parties that have been approved. And in a matter of weeks, we will go to the market to raise these funds. And the approval is such that even if you don't raise the funds, meaning you don't have it in cash, we will give GENCOs notes. So we'll do it in tranches. In the next couple of weeks, the first tranche, 1.23 trillion. In another couple of months, another 1.23 trillion. So of course, there will be a lot of bureaucracies, but I can beat my chest and say that this is record-breaking. In a couple of 3 months, we've gone as far as we've gone. In a matter of days, actually, we would be launching the prospectus, and you will see how far the bonds have gone, and then the launching will come by mid-November. We should see something strong come out of it. Yes, it's taking time. Yes, the generation companies have been owed for so long, but I can tell you that we're not resting on our oars to make this payment to them.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of people want to know the answer to this question, so I'm just going to ask you. That initial 850 million recapitalization, how was it used? How was it spent?
Okay, so part of capitalization, I can tell you 350 million was a loan. It was a Euro bond, and it had to be paid back after 5 years. So we didn't actually use up the $350 million. It was a $1 billion Euro bond, and it had to be paid back, and then we had to return the funds. Of course, with the interest, they had a debt element of it, and we were able to pay that money back in full. Even with the debt, we've paid it in full. So that's part of that. And then, of course, some of the funds have been used to backstop the payments. Of course, there are shortfalls. When the discos pay and their market shortfall, we pay the tariff shortfall to the GENCO. So a lot of those funds have gone to those payments.
Thank you. So let's move on to Abdul Aziz. So given that we've heard all of the problems, and we've also learned from Itonha, exactly what Embed is doing or what Embed plans to do to resolve some of these problems. It would be good to also understand how the World Bank is supporting, how the World Bank basically is supporting how the World Bank new financing is supporting the system to ensure deep governance and reform is part of it.
Thank you. My mic working? Yeah. Pleasure to be with you this evening, and thanks for the invitation. So I think, whatever we do, we look at the best interest of the country from, global perspective and local context. And I think oftentimes reform gets a negative connotation, but, things that don't evolve die. And so you constantly have to be in this, mentality of, something has been adopted, it made sense when it made sense, the context is changing, and now you sort of reform and look at things in a different perspective. So whatever, we do, or our approach is always grounded in, is the investment supporting the sector fundamentals, and are the sector fundamentals then enabling investment, right? And investment doesn't necessarily just mean investment financed by the World Bank, but private investment. And so I think all the programs that we have now together with the government are grounded in that. And the approach is always deal with the sector fundamentals, support those through public financing where it makes sense, but then have a plan in place to allow the private sector to come in and basically be a player in that. And we can get into that later, but some of the specific things that my colleagues had mentioned, one of the most important things to date that has been achieved is at least having a plan in place to pay the arrears. And that's one thing, for example, that the bank has been advocating for, is that you have to build confidence in the sector, and the most important way to build confidence is to pay arrears. And so this is not a secret, right? I mean, it's out in the public. But then going forward is, once you've paid the arrears, how do you then ensure that in the future you don't accumulate further arrears? So that's one of the things that we work on with counterparts, and there are various counterparts in the sector, to try and come up with a plan, methodology, approach to the sector, addressing the sector fundamentals right now that have contributed to these arrears, and ensure that you don't accumulate future arrears, or at the very least, over the short to medium term, there's a declining sort of trajectory of debt that is owed, right? So obviously you cannot eliminate the debt overnight. There are structural issues in the sector, losses, physical infrastructure, et cetera. So it's not just accounting issues. But then you have that plan in place, and over time, you reduce that to near zero and then eventually zero, and you have a sustainable financing framework that's built on fundamentals in the sector, well-performing entities, whether distribution, transmission, generation is investing because they see that there's also cash flows. So all of these things are part and parcel of our dialogue and engagement in Nigeria across the board.
Okay, thank you. So let's shift gears a bit. Let's try to identify pathways to attract sustainable power sector investment in the Nigeria power sector. So we'll begin with Dr. Joy. How can public-private partnerships be leveraged to support GENCO's investments in new capacity and cleaner generation technologies?
Thank you again for that question. My colleague, I think Abdulaziz, is it? Yes, thank you. Yes, just as he mentioned, the fundamentals. A child, no matter how smart or how active the child is, every one of us seated here, first, we were born, we learned to sit up, then we crawled, then we started walking, taking the baby steps, then we started running. the power sector needs to take a retro inspection of what has been. A few days from now, it's going to be 12 years anniversary post-privatization. So we need to ask ourselves that hard question. Are the fundamentals right? Possibly they were right in 2013. Currently, are they right? Because how do I bring a PPP? You see, a lot of the investors look at the Genco's balance sheet. My office is in central area. I want to tell you that a lot of investors call, they chat me up on WhatsApp. Oh, they're interested, they want to invest in the power sector. I say, no problem. Then they come, and after discussing with me, they go read next quarterly report and sees the humongous debt that is building. And then if you call them, they say, okay, we'll be back. So this PPP arrangement, except somebody that is looking for where to launder the money. Yes, if you're a money launderer, then you just want to dump the money anywhere so that you will not be caught. If you're a proper investor and that money you worked for it, or you know the cost, you've done a cost benefit analysis, you will not just come to a market that you don't know. If you put money, where will the money come out? You don't know. Till today, we don't know the number of customers. Do we? We don't know the number of customers 12 years post-privatization. Billing, nobody knows. The billing, no one knows how many customers are billed. The figures that are being thrown here and there are not figures that you can really take to the bank. They are figures that the regulated gives to the regulator. And you and I know some circumspection in such data. So, if you want to know how PPP can work, There are, see, in the Nigerian power sector is a very beautiful bride. And many suitors are interested. They have approached before. And let me tell you, in 2011, 2010-2011, when the road shows were done in the six different world structures, including the Washington and others, we had about 170 consortia, not consortium, consortia, indicated interest in the power sector. They came, bought the bid documents, and were interested in investing. When they looked through all the documents, they asked some questions, and they couldn't get clear answer. It's just, we will take care of it. Instead of a clear-cut answer of, this is it, this is it, this is it, this is it. So after the first bid, they all went back. No one remained. Anybody can challenge me on this data. No one remained. And that was how the privatization ended with Nigerian patriotic citizens who saved the government out of such a big shame of over 170 consortia leaving the privatization. So that same problem that made those about 170 consortia to leave, we need to investigate it, deal with it. It's not too late. We can handle it. So when we have handled it, after that time, I will answer that question. For now, let's go to primary one.
Okay. All right. Okay. But can you shed any light on clean technology? So we know that clean technologies, clean generation is the way the world is moving now.
Thank you. I forgot to actually say something. Itoa is my sister. We are like twin sisters. But on this panel, we are talking for different organizations. So there is no blood here. Thank you for the information on the bond. And in the course of our response, I couldn't really pick which exactly is as a bond being structured, or they are about to structure it, or when will it, because I hear matter of days, matter of weeks, when will this bond be out. Okay, prospective will be out when? End of October? Middle November? Which date? It's possible that investors are here who want to also buy into those bonds. That's one question. Number two question, that because this is the only platform I can talk to Iton. After here, we can't talk to each other because we are all trying to protect our turf. So, and I need this information. Now, bond, as you all know, is a discountable instrument. So when you give me a bond, I am owing the gas suppliers. Every 100 naira of my invoice, 70 naira belongs to the gas suppliers. Now, I hear that the first tranche is going to be 1.23 trillion. Now, this 1.23 trillion, what is the cash component of it? Is there a cash? Or all of them is earmarked for this bond? And if it is this bond, remember, the generation companies are owing, they also have creditors. So this bond, when you take it to the bank, some of the banks were owing. The banks, in fact, I don't even want to tell you what will happen to the Gencos when they carry this bond. Anybody who has financial understanding of financial economy will understand that these 4 trillion bonds that you're talking about will not go anywhere to resolve the Gencos problem. But in talking about clean technology, of course, I am for a good mix of energy. In order for us to grow our industry, we need the base load. And the base load are the thermal Gencos, the large hydro Gencos, and even small hydros that do not have volatility. We can actually bring in a mix of various technology. Gas is a transition fuel, so it's clean. And even the countries that said that gas was not clean, when they had problem with Ukraine and Russia, they went and revived their coal power plant. I thought they decommissioned it, but we didn't know that they were still warming it. The moment there was problem, they quickly revived it. I don't want to mention their name, but you know them. So we approaching, yes, clean energy. How many percent is Africa polluting? 3%. The whole of Africa, 3%. And yet, we have carried clean technology and we are now abandoning our main base load. Can this volatile solar keep our industries running? Remember, about 60% of our population falls between age 13 and 35. These are tech-hungry population. And the solar may not be able to run data centers to enable them carry out whatever they want to do. So while I agree we should go as the world is going, we should think deep. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing as Nigeria is still heavily reliant on gas-fired generation, Abdulaziz, how does the World Bank balance support for energy transition goals with the immediate need for reliable baseload power?
Thank you. And actually, it's enlightening to hear Dr. Joy. She would be surprised to hear that I don't necessarily disagree with her on many things. In fact, that's fundamentally diversification. It's like if you're an investor in anything, you want to diversify your portfolio. You don't want to rely on one fault in one investment to then bankrupt you, right? So I think I look at diversification as technology neutral or agnostic to the feedstock, the fuel, whether it's biomass or solar or gas or hydro, right? I think for Nigeria, clearly gas is a part of the future going forward. At the same time, I do believe, not just from a climate point of view, but from a cost point of view, from competition, spurring competition amongst the different generation options, to introduce and to have a range of different generation options in the generation mix. At the same time, you have to look at a little bit the grid and off-grid situation. What's happening in Nigeria with solar is largely an off-grid situation. I do believe that the grid is the logical end state for the country. Nigeria cannot grow fundamentally, cannot have, you know, businesses, investing, industries created based purely on off-grid, right? Off-grid has a purpose and will continue to have a purpose for those who are unable to get grid power, but eventually you have to have, you know, a well-functioning grid. And that's why when we look at these things, these investments together with counterparts, you have to assess the context of which you are looking at. In the case of solar, you know, you're actually potentially looking also at utility scale solar. Small scale, you know, 50 megawatts here, 100 megawatts there, but you start somewhere and you begin to introduce that. At the same time, we have, you know, a program working on with the Ministry of Water, but also power. It's mainly irrigation program, but it's also looking at developing hydropower programs in a more systematic way in Nigeria, and that also is, well, you can look at it as a clean source. You could also look at it as a lower, potentially lower cost or cost competitive source of generation. So you have, I don't think there should be a dogma, in my opinion. I think we have to be pragmatic in Nigeria and look at what can serve the people best, which is the lowest possible cost for the end customer.
Thank you, Abdulaziz. So it's on. Dr. Joy has said a lot about you know, confidence in investors, you know, coming into the Nigeria sector. So it'll be good to understand from a risk perspective, what must Nigeria do to restore confidence on lenders and DFIs who view the power sector as high risk and low yield?
So, what I would say, the key, I'm speaking from a government perspective, the key tool is policy consistency. Investors want to see consistency in our policies. I mean, we have several policy agencies within the power sector. We have the Ministry of Power, we have Ministry of Finance, we have the regulatory NERC, we have, so what investors want to see is that consistency. Each government is speaking the same thing. Once that consistency is there, 1, 2, the debts, which by the grace of God we are trying to clear out, no investor wants to come and see, the figures are mind-boggling. Every month we deal with invoices as large as 200 and something billion. And then you give government an invoice of 130 billion, for instance. And this keeps growing. So as we speak, for this year alone, I would say the government debt is at least $1 trillion. No investor wants to see or see those kind of debts. So first, policy coherence, everyone speaking the same, saying the same, if you go to this, either of these agencies, the same policies, and we're aligned. This is the first thing I see that investors want to see. 2, no investor wants to come and see that even those that have invested, they are owing them. Of course, so next is to make sure that those debts are cleared out. And thirdly, to plug where the leakage is coming from. Once we can have a tariff structure that sustains the market, then you can see investors coming. Yes, for now, government is subsidizing, but I can tell you for free that government is working on this subsidy to be a targeted subsidy plan rather than this blanket subsidy. Every month, Gencos bring a bill, MBT issues discos, like 30-something% of the bill, government gets the rest of the bill. The cost reflective regime must kick in. We don't have a choice. Once the tariff is cost reflective. Those that need to be subsidized will now be subsidized. That's a better structure. And then, of course, you see that a lot of the balance sheets are looking clean, and then we can see investors coming in. I can tell you that no investor, if it were you, you won't even put your money where you are not sure it's going to have returns. So these are the key things I see that should happen, and should happen real quick.
Thank you, Tom. So policy consistency, we clear our backlogs, we charge cost-reflective tariffs, and we plug any leakages in the system. Thank you. Okay, I want to, at this point, open up to the audience if we have any immediate questions. Okay, who would help me out here? So I'll take 4 questions, and then we'll go back to the panel. So please, if you could just, Martin, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first 4 to lift up their hands. So
Yeah.
please just, state your name, try to make your question as brief as possible, and then if you know which of the panelists you want to direct to, please, if not, I'll direct.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My name is Engineer Kote. I work for Abuja Electricity Diffusion Company. My question goes to the bulk trader. If I'm not,
Embed.
yeah, Embed, yes. I want to know, because since 2013 till date, we've been talking about liquidity issues. That's consistently being a Herculean issue in terms of the sector. My take is on bilateral agreements between GENCOs and directly with the DISCOs. What's the take of Embed in terms of allowing a free market so that GENCOs can, there's issue of GENCOs talking about gas. If they can sell directly to the DISCO, I think it solves that problem. And then too, if there are other market players that wants to come over, especially private sector, the issue of the Embed being the one, being the off-taker, has been an issue. Has been an issue till date. My take is for her to say, what is the issue in terms of what's that what they are taking in terms of bilateral agreement between GENCOs and DISCOs?
All right. So bilateral agreements between GENCOs and DISCOs.
Answer him.
Yes.
So it will interest you to know that, remember I told you about beautiful regulations that have come in. It will interest you to know that last year there was a NEC regulation that ordered a bilateral trading regime. And I was in that committee. We're ready to allow things go that way. People trade bilaterally. But also remember what I told you at the beginning, that it's not about the structure, it's about effectiveness of contracts. And so we said, GENCOs, you can trade bilateral with DISCOs. And guess what happened? The DISCOs were not able to agree to post bank guarantees to backstop those contracts. So until the market has effective contracts, even if it's an embed structure, bilateral structure, any structure you bring, I don't want to use negative, I don't want to say it's not going to work, but that's how even marriages are, by contracts. So there's actually a bilateral regime right now, even though it was put on hold, but we've seen these bilateral contracts coming in, seeping in little, in small contracts. So yes, the order is in place. DISCOs and GENCOs are allowed to trade bilateral, but of course, the cheapest electricity is hydro, so we won't allow all the hydros to go and of course, you want to buy the cheaper electricity, and so there's some capping to say you can trade with the hydros, but to a certain percentage. But even at that, we haven't seen those contracts coming in as they should. So there is or there is an existing regulation on bilateral currently. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Dr. Joy, why don't you ask your follow-on question or comment?
Is this working? Okay, it's working. Okay, yes, in addition to what my sister has said, I can see what he's trying to ask. I'm paraphrasing your question if I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Your question, you're asking that Embed has been in the middle, trying to buy power since privatization, although they didn't start since privatization. Embed came in 2015. So, though they were licensed since 2010, but their trading in the market actually began February 2015. So from then, there has been complaints about liquidity. So why can't we allow the Gencos and the Discos just deal and Embed be out of the way? Is that your question? Okay, all right. So just as she said, we've tried a number of things in the market. Well-intentioned, but it would be good to take a 360 view. For instance, when at first, the first regulation that came out was compulsory partial activation of contracts. Now, Gencos were forced to compulsorily partially activate because we're trying to make some contract active. The regulator had good intentions, but then the way the electricity market is, there are so many interrelated agreements. I can tell you that the generation companies alone, they have about over 10 interrelated agreements. It's not just the PPA. The PPA is with Embed. They have grid connection agreement. They have performance agreement with BP. So concession agreement. So they have about 10 interrelated. So if you tell me, for example, Egbin has an installed capacity of 1,320, and you said activate 500, exactly, that was what Egbin was told. Activate 500 megawatts. Now, Egbin is a thermal power plant, so it uses gas. Egbin has about 4 gas suppliers that supplies it gas to be able to generate up to that is installed or is
last point you made. For example, on bilateral, maybe next year there will be an opportunity to reconvene so that we have a full house. Joy, I agree with you, MD of the association. A number of frameworks have been tried, be it eligible customers, bilateral, partial activation, etc., plus including Gencos now interested in investing and owning discos as part of the positioning. So a whole lot has happened and is happening. It's not so much about structure, but it's about everything put together that needs to be looked at. My dear sister from Embed, 1.23 trillion in my mind is equivalent to 123 billion of some few years ago when we started. If you look at exchange rate and parity. We were part of the 213 billion intervention fund, the 700 billion intervention fund. I want to say to you that paying 1.23 trillion out of 4 trillion is not different from what we used to have. This is just 31%. What I would have loved to see that would be a quantum leap and a change is a framework, and that was a question that Dr. Gaji has been trying to ask, which has not been answered. You issue 1.23 trillion in the next few weeks. What are the terms and conditions? When will the balance be paid? What is the roadmap to paying it? The debt of 2025 and the one that will follow. When will they be liquidated? You can testify that during Fashola administration as Minister of Power with President Buhari, 2015, 16, 17, and 18 debts were substantially paid down. But the accumulation that followed is what we are still talking of. So pay 1.23 now without following up with a roadmap to clear the balance and other accumulation happen, will take us back to where we are coming from. So that framework is important, and the completion time. And just to say that debt in itself is not bad. Debt is a normal item in the balance sheet.
Sorry, sir, to cut you, but can you go straight to your question?
Yeah. So the question I was trying to ask is: the Gencos that are quoted are declaring profit; they are doing well. I think the reason may be that the assurance that the debt that they are owed will be paid. So where I'm going to with that is, irrespective of the cash not being available, but the classification of the debts as recoverable has gone a long way in improving the profitability without backing it up with cash. Therefore, Embed government, for there to be a change, my proposition is a complete open book on where we are and the roadmap to when all this will be completed so that everyone can see it. It makes it bankable, even if the cash has not parted from governments to the people that are being owed. Finally, what I like to say, Dr. Gaji, to you is some things that were correct when we started 12 or 13 years ago at privatization time may not be correct today. I think there is room and opportunity for a review and possibly a reset. That will be my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let's take the next question, right? Yeah.
Can I take?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Okay, my name is Professor Stephen Ogaji. I'm the General Manager for Transformation and Delivery at the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. I think I have a small question here, and that will go to Abdulaziz and to Itoha, both of them, because I think they hold specific roles that can address. Now, we talked about the debt, which was the first question that the moderator raised of 4 trillion. Now, that debt is as at 2024. 2024. For 2025, as at June ending, it's already 1 trillion. At the end of this year, it will be 2 trillion. So if you add 2 trillion to 4 trillion, it's 6 trillion. So that debt is increasing, it's not going down. Now, subsidy is not sustainable. So, like the program we had yesterday, it's not just a liquidity challenge, it's a bankruptcy challenge. So we are only paying behind, we are not looking forward to solve the problem. It will keep accumulating. And it appears no one has the guts to stand and say, let's charge the right tariff. Because once you charge the right tariff, it stops the bleeding going forward and you take care of the back. But somebody has to make that decision. If a generation company, you mentioned it in passing, if a generation company is interested and said, okay, World Bank, MBET, both of you have the capacity. You encourage, you advise government, you work for government, you advise government, you support us. Part of the debt you are owing me, can you use that? Can I use that to buy a stake in transmission? Can I use that to buy a stake in distribution so that I can see where my money is going and I can collect my money so that I don't disturb you again? Would World Bank support and say they will encourage government to take that step? Or they will prefer to maybe keep supporting us with cash while we keep digging the hole? MBET, will you support that also? That's my question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I definitely, agree with one thing you said, because I already said that myself in the beginning, which is dealing with the debt is just like putting Band-Aid. It's important, and you need to protect the wound, but it's not going to heal it by itself, right? So you need medication, you need the treatment, whatever. So I think in this case, the analogy I'm trying to make is what I said earlier, that it's commendable that there's a plan in place to pay the debt. It's something that we have, supported, pushed for, et cetera, that to build confidence in the sector, you need to pay what you have promised to pay. But going forward, whether it's tariffs or subsidies, we have said consistently that this is not sustainable, that you need to have a plan. We all collectively, as Nigeria and people who are supporting Nigeria and interested in its development, look at pathways to deal with the situation that we're currently in a way that is fair, transparent, and being able to be absorbed by people. For example, I personally, and the bank, is not advocating tariff increases, right? But there are people who will say cost-reflective tariffs is a must. And yes, eventually that should be the end goal, but you can't sort of overnight charge an X amount of Naira tariff that can hurt people, right? Especially after other things they've been hurting from. And so you look at the subsidy and you say the government should also not be putting in so much money, and basically financing some of the inefficiencies in the sector, right? So you have to look at where the inefficiencies are. Is it distribution? Is it transmission, generation, etc., collections, and address those, and then say the best use of the subsidy is to those who actually need it. And then, as I agree with my, colleagues, Otani, on the targeting of the subsidy, right? That's something that we've also said, that you cannot continue just basically writing a blank check to anybody. You should really focus that subsidy. So fundamentally, you have to look at this, the sector holistically, and then put in place some building blocks. You can't solve everything all at once. This is, a country with lots of different challenges, and you can't handle it all at once. But you need to put in place, the building blocks for that. We, support the government program, and if the government says we need some money set aside to pay some of these arrears, fine, but that's not the best use of World Bank financing, is to just pay, legacy debts. It's really to help put in place the program to avoid accumulation. And I don't, necessarily disagree also. some accumulation of debt happens all over the world in many sectors, right? Infrastructure, capital expenditures require a certain amount of debt, etc. There could be some arrears, it's fine, but that, arrears building up and arrears just not being addressed in a way that prevents future accumulation, as opposed to an emergency situation happened or some macroeconomic conditions contributed to that, and fine, you deal then with those arrears. But fundamentally, the building blocks have to be there to make sure that sector is financially sustainable. That's what I would say about this.
Okay, thank you, Abdulaziz. Before you go on, sorry.
What is it? No, I addressed the question. So sorry. Yeah.
You support?
Will I support? Yeah. That one. I apologize. No, I apologize. I got more into the other points. So fundamentally, I have a disagreement with that. I don't think that generation and distribution, it's basically putting money from here into here, and basically you are controlling the cash flows within a ring-fenced operation. Now, I understand if I'm a personal investor, and I can get away with something to make money, I'll do it. And I get why some of these initiatives are taking place. But as the World Bank, we look at the whole sector and what's in the best interest of the sector. From our perspective, we could be wrong, but that's, we put in the best effort we can. But basically, if you do that and you have the captive generation and distribution together ring-fenced, then you are potentially creating a situation where the money is flowing within one circle and you're not addressing what other generation companies can do to sell to the market, what other distribution companies can do to buy from anywhere else at a cost-effective manner. And at the same time, you are potentially creating a situation where a generation company can basically put in a price, or a cost that then gets loaded onto customers of that disco, have no other option because they're buying from the same company that controls the disco. You're not creating actually competition so that different generation companies can sell to that customer, right? And that customer gets a fair and cost, effective tariff, rather than I'm potentially held captive at whatever the GenCo decides to do, right? So that's just the fundamental thing. Did I address your question now? Maybe not to your satisfaction, but
Yeah.
I hopefully addressed it.
Yes. Sorry, before you go on, in your response, it would be good for you to also shed some light on how data transparency can also help us to avoid another set of accumulated debt, since it's unsustainable.
So actually, the power market anywhere in the world thrives on transparency and enforcement of rules. Those two things. If you don't have transparency and you don't have enforcement, so that is what is, I wouldn't say, so largely, the setting up of embed is actually one of the good sides of it is the data availability and transparency. So remember I said about enforcement, that there are a lot of regulations within the sector that work well in other climes, and they exist here, beautiful policies, but the enforcement of those policies is what is lacking. Then I wanted to quickly address my older brother's comment on the 4 trillion and the value of money. The 4 trillion is not just capacity and energy. It's made up of the capacity, the energy, the interest, and even for some of them, true-ups. So when we did the reconciliation, it is a whole holistic, right to the gas bills. The 4 trillion is as a result of the entire works from end to end. The gas bills, FX has been taken into consideration to arrive at that figure. So it's not like we just want to pay them for what they supply at that time and all of that. No, that has been taken care of. And then to Prof's question on the leakages, right? And the tariff increase.
The GenCo's owning a stake, yeah.
So there goes the original problem. With the privatization, 40% of disco ownership is still with government. The hydros, they are not completely owned by them, they are concessioned. So if that didn't work, I don't think having Gencos buy a stake in this, and it's all half and half. I think personally, not Embed's view, that wouldn't work. For instance, if I were to spearhead a privatization, I'll just go the full length of it. If it's a private business, let it be private. This mixture of government and private, I don't think it's working quite well. For instance, a distribution company wants to increase its tariff, and government say, "Oh no, not now," and all of that. So this governments and owning the same transmission, I think is a disadvantage. Personally, that's not Embed view. So that would be my answer to that. So that means that Genco owns part of the transmission, not all of it. So you are solving a problem to create another one.
Yeah.
You solve the
Currently today, transmission owned by government is the weakest link in the sector. Government has not.
It depends on who is talking.
No, they have not built any line. What have they done?
So I agree with him to say, let everybody be in the room. I can tell you for free. Disco says Genco says TCN and all of it. So we're just going around in all of this.
Okay, let's agree to disagree on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say personally that rather than take that step, why don't we solve the problem from the end of it to say, let's fix distribution, let's fix the tariff. And remember I said policy coherence. It won't be good to say NEC is saying let's increase tariff and ministry is saying don't increase. Once the policies are aligned, that will be half of it. For instance, what is really holding, what causes tariff to increase? There are macroeconomic issues. FX has been liberalized. That's what ballooned the. We never saw invoices go this big in the past in MBT, but the minute we had FX liberalized, we started having billions of naira in invoices. So some of the issues really are macroeconomic issues. Government has to be in the room, swallow the hard facts, and take a decision. If we agree that this is what it's going to be, everybody should agree on that. So that was what I would say on that. I personally don't think that would be a good way out.
Thank you, Tohan. Thank you. Okay, let's take the heat somewhere else. Some critics claim that Gencos have also benefited from opacity. That's inflated capacity declarations, inefficiencies, and limited transparency in actual generation. How do you respond to comments on Gencos not being entirely blameless in the current market crisis? Dr. Ogaji.
Before you called me, I know that the question is coming to me. Thank you so much. Yes, for people who allude to that, with all due respect to them, I think they are ignorant of how the power sector works. And this is with all due respect. The reason is the power sector, as Mrs. Iton has said, is very regulated. Let me just in a few minutes explain how the market works. Now, a generation company generates power, and there is a boundary between a generation company and transmission. So from that point where it puts power on the transmission line, it's called the bus bar. There's a meter that records how much power it has gone into transmission line on the grid, okay? So there's a meter. And at the end of that month, there's a billing period. System operator, now under NISO, Genco, And I think if I recall, MBET is supposed to be part of that reconciling team. So what they do at the end of they will read the meter, how much energy has been sent to transmission, because we don't send direct to disco. They can't take power at that velocity. It's going to be too high for them. So it is sent to TCN steps it down, then disco, yes. So there's a meter, and that meter is not read alone by GENCOs. It's read in company with these three people I've mentioned to you. So after that, the GENCO will now use that figure and prepare what we call preliminary settlement statement. This preliminary settlement statement is sent to the market operator, who will review it and confirm with system operator and NBT and whichever is supposed to be part of the reading committee to be sure that that is the energy that was recorded on that meter. Okay? With this, sometimes there are discrepancies where maybe the GENCOs, what GENCO said he put, TCN said they didn't receive it, because there are losses along the line as well. But all these things will be reconciled, and then the GENCO now prepares what we call the final settlement statement. All this is I'm saying is in the market rules. The final settlement statement, and then sends it back to, in fact, the preliminary statement is also shared with MBET. MBET also looks at it and signs off before a final settlement statement comes. And it is even this final settlement statement, after MO has approved, they send to MBET and to be able to prepare, then GENCOs will now use that final settlement statement to prepare their invoice. I took time to explain this so that this story of GENCOs are gaming the system can die in this hall. If GENCOs are gaming the system, one, the regulator is involved. MBET is involved. NISO is involved. So, in essence, whoever is making this allusion or assertion is saying that these three agencies are in cahoots with the GENCOs in inflating invoices. Go and read the market rules, and you will see that the process of invoicing is very straightforward and very transparent. And MBET is the one that pays. So if GENCOs are inflating invoices, hold it on.
Do you agree?
I don't think it's more of the energy that it's put on the grid that we're talking about. So if a generation company has a nameplate capacity, for instance, 1,000 megawatts, there has to be a capacity test first to actually confirm, can you generate 1,000? That's step one. Step two is they declare what they can do day ahead. And they may not put that on the grid. So what we're saying is that some GENCOs in their billing will say they were available for so and so time. TCN did not take the load. You see that may cause some discrepancies. I was available, you did not take my load. The TCN said, no, you were not available. So if it's just the energy you put on the grid, that one is straightforward. The settlement statement is like a balance sheet for the entire NESI. Everyone looks at it and looks at the figures. So those usually, because we face these questions every day in National Assembly. Oh, you paid Azura 2 trillion or some kind of figures when they didn't put power on the grid and all of that. No. So for every power purchase agreement, if you do have effective gas contracts and you'll be paid availability, meaning that if you were available and your load wasn't taken from you, you should get paid. So if that's what your contract says, remember I said at the beginning, it's all about contracts and how it works. Because that man has contracted with his gas guy and said, give me gas for so and so. Whether I take the gas or not, I'm going to pay you. So it moves from one participant to the other. So that is a conversation that actually exists, Dr. Joy. It's not that they're accusing, they may not understand the concept of availability events and capacity.
Okay.
No,
I would like to add.
Before you go on, so are you saying that you use the contracts to manage the discrepancies, whatever is stated in the contract?
Yes. So for every participant, so when the balance sheet, and then the balance sheet is actually prepared by the MO, not the GENCOs. So when the balance sheet comes at the end of the month, everybody has a copy of it. Everybody confirms. So this is what I did. This is not what I did, and all of that. The invoice for the GENCOs, from the GENCOs to us, is based on their contracts and their pricing. So the invoice has two elements: your contracts and the price you negotiate. And remember, not all the GENCOs have the same price. Remember, every GENCO has its own negotiated price within its PPA. So what we do is that there's a blended price, which is why I said we wouldn't allow all the hydros go to bilateral, because that will bring up the weighted average cost of power. So here's the invoice is dealt with both from the contract angle and the pricing.
Dr. Gaji.
Okay, thank you, Itoa, for the addition. This is another conundrum in the sector. The legacy power plants or the legacy GENCOs, upon privatization, were given a template PPA with a promise that after the signing ceremony that took place in 2012 at the State House, that they will sit with MBET to negotiate PPA. That room has not been open to them. So it's what MBET has decided that they should be entitled to, that they're entitled to. That's one. Two, effectiveness of contracts. The contracting is like a circle. Now, MBET is the off-taker. So the off-taker need to post me a letter of credit. And I will post that letter of credit to my gas supplier to make my gas supply agreement effective. So where MBET stands and say, your contract is not effective, but you are responsible for why my contract is not effective, but you're not being penalized for it. I am being penalized. I provide the same electricity that the people you say whose contracts are effective is the same color. Power does not have red or yellow or blue. It's the same power. If you put it, it gives you electricity. So why is it that there are some that are effective, but others you say, no, we cannot pay you? They buy gas from the same market. Everything, the OEM charges, everything is the same. So this is one conundrum that we need to deal with, because this issue of your contract is not effective, and so I will not pay you this. We are in the same market. So who is responsible for why the contract is not effective? It's MBET. And MBET to say, oh, Discos refused to post me letter of credit, they ran to court. Is that my business? Because the gas supplier said that is none of my business. Of recent, and for the records, this bond that we're hearing, as far as the GENCOs are concerned, nothing has been concluded. We have just been hearing in few days, in few weeks. Few weeks started from 25th July when we met with the president. Few weeks, now we're in October. Few weeks, they are, is it 56 or 52 weeks in a year? So few weeks could be 52 weeks from now. So how few is the weeks? How few are the days? How few are the months? Because we're looking at the time value of money. Our creditors are pulling some of you must have read on the paper, some banks want to take over GENCOs because of their default on paying the acquisition loans. GENCOs acquired this asset when the dollar was 157 naira to the dollar. Today, all of you know what it is. So please, it's on record that today, if the government pay GENCOs 100%, it will not be enough for them to pay their creditors because of the volatility of the FX from the point of acquisition to now. So anybody who is thinking that you want Gencos to give you a 50% haircut will not work. Gas suppliers said they will not give you 1 naira haircut. Gencos have been hounded to give about 50% haircut on the money that is being owed them. Please, on behalf of the Gencos, I'm appealing to decision makers. We cannot, not because we don't want to, but because we are debt collectors. We are collecting money for the gas suppliers who are 70 naira out of the 100 naira you're paying us. We are collecting money for the OEMs and for O&Ms. And at the end of the day, maybe we may not even have enough to run the plant again. So please, any plan of haircut, our hairs are okay. We don't need barbers.
Thank you, Dr. Gaji. And we would also agree to disagree on this one too. So let's move on. Dr. Gaji, we have one question from online. This is a small sector player that is asking for what opportunities exist in the sector for small SMEs, that SMEs with limited capital can also effectively participate to add value.
Okay, there are so many. You know, I told you that the power sector is a very beautiful bride. Suitors they came, some left, some are still hanging and still whistling to know if the power sector will say yes. There are so many opportunities. There are opportunities to sell power. As you know, it's unfortunate, I think there is even no provision for projection. I would have shown you the figures. The generation companies, NDPAC is here. NDPAC that has a capacity of about over 3,000 megawatts have been constrained by the grid and the market not to generate more than 500 megawatts. So that difference, that SME can come to NDPAC and discuss with NDPAC, get a buyer who needs power. That is one way. Now, this issue of transmission, there are networks, there are regulations there that an investor can come and invest on a particular network. It could be a distribution network, then you will be paid dues, which is a distribution use of system charge. Then it could be TOS, which is a transmission use of, so you can invest on those networks. So you can play the role of bulk trader, but this time make sure that you have money. Yes.
Okay. All right, question.
So these are some of the...
I have a question.
Hello? Okay. My name is Kabir Umar. I'm the one of the people that believe that every problem has immediate and remote cause.
True.
So most of these problems that are highlighted, I think would have been prevented if we had addressed the root causes of those problems. So I think the real healing will start by we stopping to mask the symptoms and try to identify the why behind them. So my question to the embed person is, what are the immediate and remote causes behind these problems? For instance, in 2007, I just woke up one day and saw some people installing prepaid meter in my house. Say, where are you from? Okay, we're from the AEDC. Okay, what are you doing? We come to install prepaid meter. How prepaid meter is it? This prepaid meter is supplied by the World Bank. So afterwards, they changed that system and came with meter, is it meter access provider or MAP? So my question to the World Bank guy, is it the World Bank on its own volition that decided to suspend that program, or is it Nigerian government that requested the World Bank hands up from that kind of program? EPS, why?
All right, thank you.
Sir,
you've asked two questions.
So, sir, the third question to the embed person, do you think that as an institution or as an critical operator, or I would say stakeholder in the industry, you guys can leverage on information and communication technologies such as IoT
in the near future. That's what I can say about the metering initiative. Yes, I know there have been several of them, and with this PMI, things will be more streamlined, and you'll soon be hearing about that. I know the district is supposed to fund this initiative and has been approved. Yeah. So to talk about.
Guy, I can tell you that we don't buy meters. The World Bank does not install meters. The World Bank supports the government program, and we fundamentally believe that meters are the backbone of the sector. Without meters, you don't have data. Without data, you don't have transparency. Now, I don't have the answer specifically to your question about why the prepaid and why it's this or that, but as Atani mentioned, that basically you have the presidential metering initiative. There's a metering gap of 7+ million, of which the World Bank is helping finance 3.2 million, and the rest is coming from FGN. And basically that is the program that's meant to support the discos, not the government or the World Bank, the discos with metering their customers. Because if they don't meter their customers, they don't know how much to vent and how much they're venting and how much they are receiving. So that's, I think fundamentally, there's no disagreement on the importance of meters. What was canceled when and how, I don't have the historical knowledge about that.
Okay, and then
To
Go
what
ahead.
he on meter. From 2012, we've had, I think, about 5 different metering programs. Pre-privatization, we had a metering program. I can't remember the name. Then privatization. No, that was before CAPME. There was something before CAPME. And CAPME, then we had MAP, NNMMP, now presidential initiative. One thing you mentioned that there are remote and immediate cause. Do you know where we will solve metering problem in Nigeria? It is when we decide to provide the standards on meter production. And just like our handset, make it public, this small SME that want to invest, they can all provide meters and put in next cash and carry, shop right, everybody go and buy your own. When you build a house, go buy your meter, call an AEDC or whatever disco you are and tell them that I've bought my meter. Send your installer to come and install for me. As long as, and this is with all due respect, as long as we keep waiting for the discos to meter everybody, I can't tell you the time when meter problem will be over. At privatization, metering was one of their KPIs, that they will meter. But each year it's been 12 years. What is the monitoring? A lot of money has been pumped in by several agencies, World Bank, different government, FEC has approved several money. See, until we decide to go to the shop, pick the meter that Standard Organization of Nigeria has approved, and we have meter installers installed in our homes. This metering conundrum, it is just doing press up.
Okay, let's take another question from someone else, please. Okay. Yes.
We have international installation best practice. So if a manufacturer can go to China, manufacture a meter that satisfies this IEC standard, take it to Gudu market, I can go and buy it and install it, then invite AEDC to come and certify whether it has complied with IEC and whether it has complied with installation best practice. Then also, if we are to leverage on the IoT and artificial intelligence, I can put a sensor, because I'm a scientist, I believe in the concept of law of thermodynamics, that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can change from one point to another. So if from generation company, from the bus bar, I can install a sensor that is connected to the internet, that anybody in Nigeria can look at the dashboard and see that so Genco has produced so amount of energy and has pumped it into the transmission company. And from the point of transmission company to distribution also, there's a meter and a sensor that every critical stakeholder can read on the internet. So in that case, the issue of disagreement between, or apportioning of blame between the embed, between the disco, Genco, and what have you, will not have arise. So I mean, ICT has the potential to address this problem if at all the stakeholders are ready to leverage on it.
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, you answered your own question. Lovely. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's go to
But
the
actually,
gentleman.
work is going on this very much so. You know, the independent system operator has just been created. They have been aggressive in ensuring that these IoTs are in place by all Gencos and working on the SCADA system, which will take care of all of this.
Okay.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Hakim. I'm a financial analyst. One question for MBT and one question for Dr. Joy. The 1.23 trillion that is to be raised. Just wondering. You say it's a bond. How is it going to be backstopped? Is it government funding? Is it through the tariff? How is it going to be paid back? That's number one. Then for Dr. Joy, you did mention repeatedly that Gencos are being owed, and we've seen about, I think if I remember, two Gencos that are listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange as of today. And I look back and Gerupa, for example, was listed at about 100 naira. Today is trading at 1,145 naira, and they've even paid dividend. So, and dividend, of course, is paid from cash. So, where are they getting this money to pay this fund? And even Transcorp Power, I've looked at analyst consensus, and they are recommending a buy. So, if they do have cash to do all of these things, how come their valuation is that high, and they even have money to pay cash, to pay dividend? Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question.
So the MBET question, yes. The bond is going to be backed by FGN, but the repayment sources won't just rely on FGN. We have DISCO historical receipts. For instance, even the 213, you know what I'm talking about, have been fully paid. So rather than channel that back to the DISCOs, to go to the repayment into the sinking fund. So we set up a sinking fund to have receipts, and then of course there's going to be a line charge. Please don't report me 3 to 4 naira on the tariff, specifically for the repayment of the bond. So those are the three sources of repayments that will go into the sinking fund.
Thank you. Dr. Joy, so
Okay.
Just to paraphrase this question, he said, how are the generating companies
Posting profit.
How are they posting profits?
When we are owing them trillions.
How are they paying shareholders? How are they paying people who buy shares in their organization?
Okay, thank God you say you are a financial analyst, right? Is that what you said? Okay. And if you're a financial analyst, you understand the workability of the shares market, right? Okay. Once you're publicly there for prospectors to buy your shares, every now and then shareholders are looking whether you are adding value. So what Transcorp and Geregu are doing is just reporting their receivables in anticipation of this base being paid. So, and in order to encourage shareholders, because if they just keep saying that these are receivables, they also want to encourage more shares to be bought. So they've gone to the capital market to borrow to prove that they are paying dividends. Any other thing outside, I know if you answer them, because I was not there.
Okay, next question.
Okay, good evening. My name is Engineer Modibo Umar. My question is, I just want to take it to another perspective because I see us all taking the same route. With the new Electricity Act, the states have now their own markets. So all this, we are in the federal market now. Going down to the state market, and I understand that the discos are the only source of liquidity in the sector. How do you see, I just want to see the future. How do you see the states managing the discos and paying back the gencos? So I'm just asking the moderator now.
Okay.
So if I want you to just throw it open to anyone that can answer so that we can see the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So on this one, I'll start and then I'll hand over. So let's use Enugu State, right, as an example. So we know with Enugu State, at the state level, you're now looking at the disco level, you're looking at what distribution licenses and what trading licenses. So the trading licenses, that means what you can essentially buy and sell from wherever, right? And then that's a way to sort of guarantee revenue. And then you have so basically what they're doing at the state level now is separating responsibilities, separating powers. So that's one way. But I'll hand over to Dr. Joy to continue.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that question. I'll be surprised if there was no question on states. For the GENCOs, the states are our new beautiful bride. Our husband or our suitor in the federal market has shown us way. So now we're looking at the states. Now that question, how will the states ensure that the distribution companies collect and pay? You know, when we were designing the privatization and when they brought in the second C, in most countries in the world, you just know A, T, and C. Our own, we added A, T, C, and C to the point that for a disco not to bother to even collect, we are paying him for not even bothering. That's the collection loss. So the states, I believe, have learned. When I was in secondary school, I had a commerce teacher who said, if you see the head of a lizard, when a snake bites you once and you see the head of a lizard, you will run. So I would expect that the state markets will learn from what has happened to the federal market. Because you can see from privatization how much money has been sunk. 213 billion. 701 billion. 600 billion. And now we have jumped from billion to trillion. The states, I believe, should learn. And the way they can learn is to start putting in place models, framework on how transparently, one, the discos must bill. They must ensure that the discos in their terrain know their customer number. Because when we're, a lot of tariff increase has just been flying here. How do you increase tariff when you don't even know the number of customers? How do you calculate, for example, if you have 100 akara and 30 people are supposed to eat the akara, how do you share it if you don't know that they are 30? Or you just throw it and anybody carry? It's not like that now. So the state must know, they must have bankable data. They must understand that power is not a political tool. That it is an economic advancement tool. They must understand that. And when they understand this, then they will be able to, like Enugu, as he referenced. I've gone to Enugu, met with the regulators, and they are focused on ensuring that they don't repeat the same mistakes at the federal level. Unfortunately, power in Nigeria is 99% politics, 1% technical. Food for thought.
Thank you, Dr. Gaji.
And thank you, Dr. Joy, for your views as well. I think, it's multidimensional. You can look at, first of all, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important one. I think just we have to recognize that federalism and the power sector, it's a very small club. You know, there's not, you can count them on one hand, the countries that have to deal with that. So it's, in fairness to Nigeria, it's not as simple as, you know, black and white. And so, but what I would like to just zoom out a little bit and focus very briefly on fundamentals of the sector, which is, it's fine for political purposes to say that, you know, states have a license and a legal right to license and to regulate. But it's another thing to think about how the sector is operating in an efficient manner across the whole country, because electrons move where they move, right? And if I'm a state and I say, you know what, you know, the power sector is broken, let me fix my own state. I guarantee you that a big part of that solution will be, can I buy and sell to my neighbors? Because there's no way you can you can have 36 islands of power, right? And 36 separate grids. There may be some exceptions, you know, some bigger markets can do that, but for the rest of the country, it's unlikely that's going to happen. So I think it's very important, if anybody's listening, to think about where the state can manage, maybe as Dr. Zoe said, at the customer level, identifying the customer, dealing with, you know, the mechanics of creating a sub-co, right, as an offshoot of the current discos. That's fine. Maybe tweaking some of the subsidies, you know, to their particular context, also fine. But then there has to be a federal level thinking about how the power sector will operate. What are the rules that govern all states, right? The bare rules, technical, you know, economic, etc. And then you can go down at the state level and say, okay, I have more hydro in my state, so maybe I can generate domestically, you know, at the local level. Some other states will say, I don't have the resource, I need to buy. So yes, you'll have some different strategies for each state, but it cannot be 36 different strategies, right? It has to be, like, in my opinion at least, one overall arching framework, and then within each state you can kind of tweak at the margins.
All right, thank you, Abdulaziz.
I'll just chip in a bit.
And I'm sorry, before you go on, please, you can go ahead, chip in, of course. I'm not stopping you from doing that, but can you just segue into your closing remarks?
Okay, so
Yes.
so the state electricity market, the idea behind this was actually to solve state-specific issues rather than what I'm seeing today. Because even the admin charges for the electricity market, you now see the states are now featuring. So what are we doing? Are we now, the 5,000 megawatts, is that what we're going to start? Do you understand? So the idea was for each state, because if you check what the discos are getting, some states are getting very minimal, so they're supposed to look inwards, and just like he said, state-specific issues should be resolved rather than see how we can play the big boy comes. So that's my own take on that. And then generally, I will say over and over again that a lot of the things that will fix this within the sector is policy alignment, and coherence. We all have to be on the same page, be it a ministry, be it a regulator, whoever it is, and then come to the room, and these talk shows should kind of reduce, and let's walk the talk. I think that will be my closing remark largely.
Okay, thank you. Abdulaziz, closing remark.
Yeah, I think a lot has been said, but I think in the end, you know, despite the challenges people see in the sector in Nigeria, it's not insurmountable. I think with just the right, you know, attitude, leadership, and focus really on, rather than firefighting, you know, preventing the fire from ever happening in a way, right? So I think just dealing with the underlying structural issues of the sector, where as the you know, kind of saying goes, the shoe pinches, fine, but then design a shoe that fits you comfortably, right? Rather than deal with the swelling all the time. So I think that's where I feel it's not clear yet that is the case. It's mostly dealing with, you know, invoice here, that there, some regulation being issued, and that happens in the normal course of life, but I think that fundamentally there are structural issues that are quite straightforward, and I think just with the right focus, you know, you can pretty much see a big change in the sector if that focus is there.
Thank you. My parting shots, I concur with my what my co-panelists have said, because those are the steps. I think for me, my parting shot is a renewed focus, a renewed apolitical focus on the power sector will take us to where we ought to be. That this issue of thinking that the power sector problem can never be surmounted is not true. There are so many low-hanging fruits. We can put them in phases. Phase 1, do this, do this. Before you know, we will be able to resolve it. Let's just take politics out of it, because politics, 99% of the problem is because of politics. Once we take politics out, power will work. We should think, why is Morocco having nearly 100% energy access? Morocco, Tunisia, India, Egypt, all the northern African countries have nearly met their universal energy access target. And what is happening to us? We are the same Africans in the same region. That's my parting shot.
Thank you. All right, so we've heard it all. I need not say more. Let's talk less and do more. Please give a round of applause to our panelists.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that we were able to take one or two things out of the session. We look forward to having you at the next Power Dialogue next month. See you there. Thank you.
Recording stopped.